country's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday reversed his recent controversial decision to sack the country's Defence Minister Yoav Gallant. He said they had difficult disputes, but they had decided to leave it in the past. Netanyahu said Gallant would stay in his position and they will work together for the security of the country. Listen in.
גם בימים האחרונים אנחנו עובדים יחד ועומדים יחד מסביב לשעון בכל החזיתות מול האתגרים הביטחוניים. היו מחלוקות בינינו, אפילו מחלוקות קשות בכמה נושאים. אבל החלטתי להשאיר את המחלוקות מאחורינו. גלנט נשאר בתפקידו ונמשיך לעבוד יחד למען ביטחון אזרחי ישראל. בכל המועד פסח, חג חירותנו, אני מבקש לומר לכם, אזרחי ישראל, יחד נעמוד.
In March, Gallant said that the judicial overhaul bills have become a security threat to Israel. He made a public address and called for the government to stop pushing the overhaul plan. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu sacked him from his post for the statement. The Prime Minister's move triggered spontaneous mass demonstrations in the country, which threatened to paralyze Israel, forcing Netanyahu to suspend his judicial overhaul plan. Last week, Netanyahu said that he would delay the defense minister's dismissal. Now, he has retracted it entirely. Israelis have been demonstrating the judicial reform bills for over 2 months now, and there are no signs of slowing down. Hundreds of Israeli protesters gathered in Tel Aviv on Monday night. They chanted slogans and blocked streets near a highway in Tel Aviv. The government has paused its judicial overhaul after months of demonstrations. But protest and violence continues, and Netanyahu's popularity is on a decline as well. Now, despite Netanyahu's announcement to retract the defense minister's expulsion, his popularity has taken a big hit. A recent poll by an Israeli media organization said that Netanyahu is likely to lose if elections were held now. It said Netanyahu would fail to gain a majority with his hard-right coalition partners. For more on this, we're now being joined by correspondent Jody Cohen from Lanana. Hi, Jody. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has now officially reinstated the defense minister. Is this a sign of weakness on the part of Netanyahu, followed by months of demonstrations in the country?
Hi, Rahisha. So yes, in his speech on Monday night, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that he and Defence Minister Gallant had their differences, but were now putting them behind them, saying that the two are working together to defend Israeli citizens on multiple fronts. And he talked about acting against rockets from Syria, Lebanon and Gaza, specifically against Hezbollah, Iranian and Hamas infrastructure there, and against terror groups in the West Bank. We've heard of further clashes this morning in Jenin, and against youth on the Temple Mount Al-Aqsa compound, who he said were trying to break the status quo. Now, it's interesting, in his speech, Netanyahu appeared to blame the previous government and the opposition for these spate of attacks that we're seeing on Israel. He cited the gas deal with the Lebanese government, which includes Hezbollah, and calls not to go to the army, saying that Israel's enemies interpret these as weakness. He said statistics show that when he's been Prime Minister, attacks have been at their lowest, that the current government is reinstating the deterrence, but it will take time. Now, opponents of Netanyahu are likely to see the reinstating of Gallant as a victory for the protests. Supporters of Netanyahu, on the other hand, are likely to see this as realpolitik and that security is the priority.
Right, Judy. Let's also talk about Netanyahu's political future. Israel has seen weeks of demonstrations, and now a new poll has suggested that support for Netanyahu has dropped massively. Are we likely to see elections again in the country?
So, as you said, hundreds of people went out protesting after the speech last night in Tel Aviv. We also saw 10,000 people participating in a right-wing march on Monday. Now, this wasn't against the government. The key message there was that Israel won't surrender to terror. But we know that the council heads of Judea and Samaria are calling for specific measures like more checkpoints to help prevent further attacks. And it's interesting that the Finance Minister Smotrich and National Security Minister Ben Gvir were at that march. But as you said, this Channel 13 poll that's come out suggested that if elections were held now, that Likud would go from 32 to 20 seats, meaning from the largest to the third largest party, and that the coalition would lose its majority, going from 64 seats to 46. And it also showed that former Defence Minister Gallant would more than double his number of seats in Parliament. We know that polls are often wrong. If this is correct, however, ironically and theoretically, you could say that it could make the coalition stronger, because it means it's less likely that any of the coalition parties will leave the coalition. They're more likely to stay united to prevent the opposition from getting into power, at least in the short term. Now, Netanyahu himself said he's not moved by this poll. He said the government will serve for the full 4 years, and that the determining factor will be the way it handles security, the economy, health, education and peace.
Right. Thank you, Jodie, for joining us on WION and sharing your insights with us. Thanks very much.
Thank you.